Howdy everyone, it's Sam. Welcome back to the Wobble Enjoy Sports channel. If you're new around here, hope I can get you to consider liking the content and subscribing to the channel. But if you are a regular around these here parts, thank you very much for the continuous support. Yes! I got 7 correct tips out of 8 in the regular rounds, and then I got both State of Origin tips correct, and that puts me at above 61% again. So thank friggin' goodness for that, because it was looking a little bit dire there for a couple of weeks, but I'm back in the 60s. Let's get stuck straight into round 15 of the 2023 NRL season. It is a cruel and macabre joke that kicks off round 15 of the 2023 season. The Gold Coast Titans host the West Tigers at Cbus Super Stadium on Thursday Night Football. PTSD, much nightmare fuel, fair income. It is the Gold Coast Titans, who are $1.77 favourites coming into the contest. The West Tigers are $2.05 outsiders. This is the 26th meeting between the two, and the Titans did defeat the Tigers in or at Leichhardt Oval in round 1 this season. 2017 was the last time the Tigers defeated the Titans at Cbus Super Stadium. 2019 was the last time they defeated the Gold Coast, period. A milestone, which could give a little bit more fuel to my tip this afternoon, is that Philip Sami is playing his 100th NRL game, and he has been in pretty good form in 2023. I got to reiterate this point that I've made over the past couple of weeks, that the West Tigers have now become the best team at being effective. They are the best team at not missing their tackles by and large. And they're coming up against the Gold Coast, who are second worst for ineffective tackles, and they're about halfway. They're in between when it comes to missed tackles as well. And let's get stuck straight into the team list news, and a huge return for the Gold Coast. AJ Brimson is in at fullback. AKP and the milestone man Philip Sami are the wingers. Brian Kelly and Aaron Schupp are the centres. That means Campbell and Boyd are the halves. The forward pack, Fodawaker, Verrills, Fa'asuamaleaui. The back row, Haas, Stimson, and Liu. The interchange reads Leeming, Clark, Jolliffe, and Isaac Fa'asuamaleaui. And then in the reserves, there is Jojo Fafita, Kinney, and McKaylee. Looking for Dave Fafita's name just quickly. Dave Fafita is just being rested. He is being rested for this game against the West Tigers. And the backline from last weekend's wild game against the Canberra Raiders, backline's unchanged. The forward pack is unchanged, and the interchange reads Simpkins, Seyfarth, Twal, and Kapoa. Just in the reserves as well is Dane Laurie as 18th man. This is genuinely a difficult game to tip. West Tigers are coming into the game with better form. AJ Brimson is an almighty inclusion in at the fullback position, but not playing Dave Fafita could come back and bite them. The Titans' second half woes, man, are insane. They are so graphic at the moment. I absolutely want to tip the West Tigers in this game. Oh my God, I really want to tip the Tigers in this game so much. Who do you trust? This is genuinely a flip of the coin game. But Sam Verrills has one more game under his belt. AJ Brimson is back at fullback. I think he is worth at least a try more. I don't want to. I didn't think I was going to, but I'm going to tip the Gold Coast Titans to win 1-12, and heaven help us if it's any worse than their last Thursday night encounter that happened up at the Gold Coast about this time last year. On the ladder, there may be a couple more games this weekend that you could classify as match of the round, but You're kidding yourself if you don't think this is, in my opinion. This is the match of the round. Two games on Friday night, and game number one sees the Raiders host the Warriors at Canberra Stadium. On tab.com.au, the Raiders are $1.60 favourites. The Warriors are $2.35 outsiders, and this will be the 49th meeting between the two clubs. And the Raiders hold the overall record 26 wins, 22 wins for the New Zealand Warriors. Since September 2020, the results have a win-loss pattern, and it is due for a Warriors victory. So if you like tipping based on patterns, win-loss patterns, the Warriors are due a win. That's a sequence that's gone 5 games in a row now. This is the first time they're meeting this year, so like I've got all these stats in front of me, but the biggest stat of them all is that Aiden Fanua-Blake plays his 50th career game for the New Zealand Warriors, and Josh Curran plays his 50th first grade game. So congratulations to Curran and Aiden Fanua-Blake. The Warriors last won in Canberra in 2021. And the past 2 of the 3 past encounters at Canberra Stadium, the Warriors have been a bit of a bogey side for the Raiders. 8 of the past 10 matches between the two clubs since 2014 has been decided by 1 to 12 points. So I think we are also in for another thriller between the Raiders and the Warriors this weekend. It is 5th versus 14th when it comes to line breaks, and it's the Warriors who are 5th, Raiders who are 14th. 4th versus 16th for decoy runs, the Warriors up above, and that bleeds into that line break stat just before, whereas the Raiders are 16th for decoy runs. And for missed tackles, this is where the first team to tighten up may go a long way towards victory. This is the battle between the 3rd worst and the 7th worst teams when it comes to missed tackles in the NRL. Also, just one more as well. The Raiders are better at post-contact meters by a couple of hundred on top of the Warriors. And then the Warriors are a little bit better over the Raiders when it comes to tackle breaks. So while they're not relatively even, they've got a couple of stats that they are better at compared to the other side. And it all just evens itself out rather beautifully as well. Let's go into the team list news. So we've got Sebastian Kris, who has been named at fullback. Hopewadi and Rapana are the wingers. The centres, Jared Croker and Matt Timoko. The halves, Whiten and Fogarty. The forward pack, Elliot Whitehead returns. That's a massive inclusion for them. Zach Wolford looked like he was going to be suspended, but he'll pay a fine instead. Corey Horsburgh will now play from the lock position. The interchange reads Starling, Gula, Kotrick, and Solo, and Xavier Savage is in there on the reserves bench as well. Looking into the New Zealand Warriors team lineup now, so CNK returns to Canberra Stadium to play up against his old club. DWZ and Montoya are the wingers. Adam Pompey and a Warrior debutant playing in the centres this week. Ali Lea'atawa. Oh, bloody hell. Lea'atawa. I am so sorry if I've pronounced that incorrectly. Ali Lea'atawa is playing with jersey number 3 on his back. Metcalf and Johnson remain as the halves pairing. And the forward pack, Harris, Niokore, Ford, Afoa, Egan, AFB, and the interchange is Sirinen, Curran, Barnett, and Tom Arley. And Freddie Lussick is on the reserves list as well. Mitch Barnett was sensational in his return game last weekend against the Dolphins. No more bullshit. It's Jared Croker's 300th game. I love the Warriors. I really like the Warriors, but fair dinkum. Since the Cowboys have the bye this weekend, I'm putting on me lime green jersey. I'm putting in the lime green eyes. Come on, you Raiders. Jared Croker's 300th game, Friday, 6 p.m. This is absolutely the game of the round, and I genuinely am tipping the Canberra Raiders to win what will be a thriller. And the second game on Friday Night Football is from Four Pines Park, Manly Seagulls versus the Dolphins for the first time ever. And this is the first fair dinkum match the Dolphins will have played in Sydney. And the odds on tab.com.au, $1.40 for the Manly Seagulls. The Dolphins are $3. Let's have a look straight away at the team lists, actually. So in at fullback, Tom Trbojevic will play. It was a Category 2 knockout, not a Category 1. The wingers are Saab and Tuapolotu. Kohler and Garrick are the centres. Schuster, DCE, the halves pairing. The forward pack, Paseka, Croker, Sipley, Olakawatu, Fainu and Sean Kepi in the lock position. And interchanges Lawton, Aloye, Ethan Bullymore and Ben Condon. And just on the reserves bench, Jacob Arthur is floating around on the reserves list for Manly. The Dolphins sees a return of Hamiso Tabuai-Fidow in at fullback. The wingers are Zarko and New. Aiken and Lee are the centres. Nikorima and Katoa are the halves pairing because Milford is suspended for a couple of weeks due to a brain explosion. Then the forward pack reads Bromwich, JMK. Farmer Silly is starting with jersey number 10 on his back, and JMK does return after, I think, just copying an injury last weekend that halted him from playing. The back row is Kenny Bromwich, Lemuelu, and Ray Stone, and the interchange reads SASA, Nichols, Donahue, and Valence Tavare. Ethan Bullymore plays his 50th first grade game on Friday night. And Manly, when it comes to ineffective tackles, they are better than the Dolphins. So Dolphins are a little bit worse in that regard. And the Dolphins are better at not missing as many tackles as the Manly Seagulls are. Manly are second last for line breaks. It's 14th versus 17th when it comes to tackle breaks as well. That's where the two clubs stand on the stats. So tackle breaks. So I guess the first team to really be a bit more clever with the ball is going to go a hell of a long way, but you've also got to run with a bit of venom as well. I think these sides are actually really evenly matched. I think it's going to be a supremely close contest. There's a lot of value on the Dolphins, and they've proven to be more consistent in play during play than the Seagulls have this season. I don't know what to expect from Turbo and DCE this weekend, for example. I don't know what to expect from any of the Manly Warringah Seagulls players, to be fair dinkum with you. I do think the Dolphins have more points in them, though, and I think they'd be absolutely stinging after getting belted last weekend against the Warriors at Go Media Stadium. Oh, you know, I went against me heart in the first game. I'm going to tip the Titans over the Tigers. I didn't want to tip the Titans, but I will. But I'm going to go with me heart this time. I'm going to go the Dolphins in an upset. Hamiso Tabuai versus Turbo. Hammer, as far as I'm concerned, has Turbo's number, or at least when it comes to state of origin anyway. But yeah, Dolphins. Tipping Dolphins. It's a really brave, bold choice. But I'm going to stick with the Dolphins. I think they got some more points. And Nikorima and Katoa have proven to be a pretty good halves combination as well. JMK is back in as well. So I think this is going to be a really good game. And I'm going to tip the Dolphins to get the upset at $3 outsiders. Super Saturday has 3 contests, and game number 1 is from Netstrata Jubilee Stadium at Cogra. The Dragons host the South Sydney Rabbitohs for the first time this year, and it is the 39th meeting between the two, with South Sydney having 20 wins, Dragons having 18 wins, and overall, this is about there's been over 260 first grade games played between the Dragons and the South Sydney Rabbitohs. On tab.com.au, the Dragons are $2.75 outsiders, and South Sydney are $1.45 favourites. See, right there, I thought the Dragons would be bigger than the Dolphins coming into this weekend. So, yeah, fair bit of value about the Dolphins just previously. Let's go straight into the team list news. Look, not taking away anything from their performance last weekend, the Dragons were impressive against the Penrith Panthers out there at Bluebet Stadium, and I just fobbed them off to lose 13 plus, but they can obviously hold their heads high. So their backline from last Sunday is unchanged. The forward pack, you've got Burns, Sewer, and Masilla in the forward pack, and the interchange reads Mbai, Hunt, Kerr and Musgrove. Talatau and Monet are still sitting in as jersey 18, and Jack Bird and Blake Laurie have also been named on the reserves list. So maybe a little bit of changing and swapping might happen before kickoff. Unfortunately, Latrell Mitchell has not been named even in the reserves list, so he's unable to overcome his calf injury that kept him out of Origin. So Blake Taff, who always does an honourable job, is the fullback for South Sydney. Johnston, Tass, Graham, Kenner, Walker, Ilias. The forward pack is Totola, Cook, Sele, Kolomatangi, Host, and Shaq Mitchell is starting the game in the lock position. Interchange reads Cartwright, Cheekham, or Saliva Havili returns from a long-term injury in jersey 16. He's going to come off the bench, and he did some wondrous things for him in 2022. And the interchange, and then the final interchange player is Daniel Saluka Fafita. Tane Milne and Liam Knight have also been named on the reserves list as well for South Sydney. Cameron Murray and Jai Arrow out of this game with injuries and probably out of Origin number 2 as well. A little bit less on Cameron Murray though. This is the first match at Cogra for South Sydney Rabbitohs since round 12 of 2020. They did defeat the Dragons on that occasion. The Dragons haven't defeated the Rabbitohs at Cogra since 2018. The Dragons, they've actually been the whipping boys for the South Sydney Rabbitohs over the past 6 or 7 years, really. They got their first win against the Rabbitohs in 9 attempts last year down at Wollongong. And that was the infamous game, or the famous game, where Lachlan Ilias was hooked halfway through that game. And the Dragons, in that first half anyway, played some of the most fun, electric footy of 2022. Their first half against South Sydney last year down at Wollongong was insanely good. Really, really fun stuff to watch. I'm going to say this with a little bit more respect and not fobbing off the Dragons. South Sydney to win 13 plus. I say that with more respect because they've got more points in them than the Penrith Panthers do. And Panthers barely have any points in them, and they still scored 26 against the Dragons, even though some of the refereeing was diabolically bad in that game. So I am going to tip South Sydney 13 plus, but yeah, if Jack Bird and Blake Laurie come into the game, I think it will definitely shorten up, but I am going to stick with South Sydney 13 plus. The second game on Super Saturday is from Suncorp Stadium. The Brisbane Broncos host the Newcastle Knights. On tab.com.au, the Broncos are the favourites at $1.22 and the Knights are $4.30 outsiders. This is the 55th meeting between Knights and Broncos, and it's the Broncos who have won 36 times, and there's one draw in there as well. 17 wins to the Newcastle Knights. 10 of the past 13 matches between these two clubs has been decided by big margins, by 13 plus. Newcastle last won in Brisbane versus the Broncos in 2021, and this is Billy Walters' 50th first grade game. So congratulations, kudos to him. Going into the Broncos team list, it is a full strength backline. The forward pack is full strength. The interchange is once again full strength. Jesse Arthurs, Jensen, Palacia, they're all named on the reserves bench. The Broncos are just about the healthiest club in the NRL at the moment, and they're pretty much leading the competition. So they are setting the standard in 2023, are the Brisbane Broncos. The Newcastle Knights, it is their full strength complement. Gamble, Hastings are the halves pairing, and Kalen Ponga is at fullback. The forward pack reads Saifiti, Crossland, Thompson, Frizzell, Fitzgibbon, and Adam Elliott at the lock position, and interchange reads Kurt Mann, Saifiti, Jack Hetherington, and Matt Croker. I'm sorry, Newcastle Knights, but they don't travel, even though they defeated Broncos only a couple of years ago up at Suncorp. They are not a good team when it comes to travelling into Queensland and getting the dub. They've got a dead set 30% success rate over the past 10 years or so. I am going to tip the Brisbane Broncos by 13 plus. And the main event on Super Saturday is from Allianz Stadium. The Roosters host the Panthers, and it is the 99th meeting between the two clubs. Roosters have 56 wins, Panthers 41, and there has been one draw between these two clubs since Penrith's inception. On tab.com.au, it is the Sydney Roosters, who are outsiders at $2.50, and the Panthers are $1.53 favourites. This is the first trip to Allianz Stadium for the Penrith Panthers at the brand new grounds, but this is the first game that they have played there since 2018 at the old SFS. So they, besides the SCG, they haven't been really around Moore Park since 2018, if you catch me drift. Penrith Panthers, they last played the Roosters at the old SFS in 2018. Penrith last won at the SFS in week one of the finals in 2017 against the Sea Eagles. So 5-6 years since they last won at Moore Park by and large. Penrith Panthers, they last defeated the Roosters at Allianz Stadium or Sydney Football Stadium before it was knocked down in 2016. So they haven't got the job done against the Eastern Suburbs since 2016 have the Penrith Panthers. Let's go into the team list news. First of all, for the home side, Daniel Tupou returns on the wing for the Roosters. Junior Palga keeps his position on the wing, and Manu and Kira remain as the halves. The forward pack, Satili Tupanua on in lock position. The Butcher brothers are the back rowers, and the interchange reads Smith, Brown, Crichton, and Matt Lodge. Drew Hutchison and Fletcher Baker have also been named on the reserves. Going into the Penrith Panthers now, Jack Cogger will wear. Going into the Penrith Panthers, Jack Cogger will wear the number 7 on his back because Cleary is out for 6 weeks with a hamstring injury, and the forward pack is unchanged. Liam Martin, Smith, Lenu, and Jamin Salmon round out the interchange bench. These two teams only met about 5 or so weeks ago, and the Panthers blitzed them. Roosters went down by 12 points on 2 occasions against the Bulldogs on Sunday afternoon and only just pipped them. I'm going to tip Penrith Panthers, and I'll say 1-12. I'll say Penrith Panthers beat the Roosters 1-12. I don't think it shouldn't be another 48 points to 10 sort of scoreline against the Roosters at Allianz Stadium on Saturday night. Based on ladder position, this is probably the game of the round. The Melbourne Storm host the Cronulla Sutherland Sharks at Amy Park. And on tab.com.au, Storm are $1.55. The Sharks are $2.45. That word rivalry has been thrown around again by a lot of people, and I don't think it's a rivalry. There was definitely a fair bit of bad blood for a few years there, but I don't think it's a rivalry, dudes. This is the 45th meeting between the two clubs, and it's Melbourne who leads 28-16 in their head-to-head. Cronulla got their first win versus Melbourne since 2019 last year, but they haven't won in Melbourne since 2018, have the Sharks. There are 3 players that remain that are playing this weekend. Jesse Ramien, Moylan, and Wade Graham played in that victory in 2018. This is a milestone game for the Melbourne Storm fullback, Nick Meaney. He plays his 100th first grade game in the NRL. Kudos to him. He has been super consistent at the Storm. He's gone to another level, and he wasn't even that bad. He was actually quite good when he was at the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs. Cronulla, in every stat, just about, are better than the Melbourne Storm except for 2: handling errors and ineffective tackles. So if the Sharks don't kind of fall asleep on the Melbourne Storm this weekend, you imagine Harry Grant is going to be darting out a dummy half and being his destructive best. And then the same thing can be said with Cameron Munster and the like. So the Sharks, they do have a couple of weaknesses. They are ill-disciplined when it comes to handling errors. They are penalised a lot, and they are a worse team. They're not the worst, but they are a worse team when it comes to ineffective tackles. But overall, the Sharks lead the Storm in every other stat, in every other category. This is another really difficult game to tip. The Storm, they leaked 45 points against the North Queensland Cowboys on Sunday. It is the second highest amount of points that they have leaked under Craig Bellamy since 2003. And we know that, or it's just the vibe that they give off, that whenever they seem to get spanked, the Storm usually come out firing. And a lot of people are tipping the Cronulla Sharks without a second thought to Melbourne. But Cronulla, there's just something about them that they've got the team on paper and they've definitely played like premiership contenders and they still remain as premiership contenders. But that was a really, really disappointing effort against the Brisbane Broncos on Saturday night. Plus, they absolutely effed me perfect round of footy. I only needed the Sharks to get a perfect 10 from 10 or 9 from 9 if you include the two State of Origin games. You friggin' Cronulla Shire bloody pricks. I'm actually going to tip the Melbourne Storm in this game. I think they're going to return down to Melbourne Sunday afternoon footy. Hopefully it's a dry surface, and I think they're going to get some sort of vengeance after getting spanked by North Queensland on Sunday. And the final game of round 15 is on Monday, the public holiday, the King's Birthday matchup that sees the Bulldogs host the Parramatta Eels at Accor Stadium. And on tab.com.au, the Dogs are $3 outsiders, the Eels are $1.40 favourites. This will be the 154th meeting between the two sides, and it's the Bulldogs that still have the lead at 78 wins, 70 losses, and 5 draws to the Parramatta Eels. They took the Roosters all the way to the edge, and if it was, I think if Carl Oluwapu and Matt Burton and a couple other players had a little bit more experience in them, I reckon they win that game. I just think they lacked a little bit of experience in trying to get those 2 points that they probably, or they did deserve against the Sydney Roosters on Sunday. The Parramatta Eels, they're coming off their bye. It's a really long break. They played on Friday last week, or the week before. So yeah, they've had themselves quite the layoff, but there's still a bit of drama in Parramatta camp, isn't there? The King's Birthday, or what was known as the Queen's Birthday, Monday clash, was always Bulldogs and Dragons. The Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs have won 3 public holiday birthday games in a row. They have only lost twice on this day since 2015. This is also pretty much 1 year to the day where the Bulldogs caused one of the biggest upsets of 2022, where they absolutely flattened the Parramatta Eels last year in one of the most extraordinary results of 2022. They haven't lost this game as well, this birthday matchup, since 2019. And also just the head-to-head as well, recent head-to-head, is that these results have been decided by 13 plus 5 games in a row now. I chose to steer clear of the Bulldogs last year, and they sprung up the upset. And it's a bit of a hoodoo game, you know. Like it follow the storyline. So just quickly, let's go into the team list first, though. So Karaz, Kyle Oluwapu, Josh Adokar, Avarillo, they're in the back line. Reed Barney is not a Category 1, so he has been named in the hooker position. The back row, Ockenball, Preston and Edwards. The interchange, Rajab has been promoted from 17th jersey to number 14. Morin, Patolo and Corey Waddell in jersey number 17. And Jackson Torpine and Franklin Pele has been named on the reserves list. The backs, for the Parramatta Eels, Will Penasini and Simonson, Russell, Sevo and Gutherson, the back line. Brown and Moses are the halves pairing. Regan Campbell-Gillard returns. Oh, Regan Campbell-Gillard returns. Josh Hodgson and Junior Paulo. Oh man, you're going to bloody put some pressure on me. Tip punches. Offa Hickey Ogden, Brenton Hands, Dury and Makatoa round out the interchange bench. Oh, Regan Campbell-Gillard back for Parramatta. This is a tough game. They met these two clubs earlier this year, and there was Eels that did it pretty comfortably in the end, winning 13 plus, I think it was anyway. But they did it comfortably in any event. This isn't going to be the same thing. I was really impressed by what the Dogs actually offered up or dished out to the Sydney Roosters the other day. And if James Tedesco doesn't play that game, the Roosters don't win that match. But RCG back for the Eels is absolutely massive because he was pretty much, besides Gutherson, their best player up until he got injured up in Darwin about 5 or 6 weeks ago now. Tough game to tip, but I've got to follow. I've got to follow it. I've got to follow the hoodoo tip. I'm going to tip the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs in another win. They have a great record on this birthday public holiday Monday matchup, and I didn't tip them last year. Kicked me in the ass. I'm going to tip them this year, and if they don't win this one, I feel like I'm going to be kicked in the front this time, not the backside. Yo, that's it for me this week, guys. Thank you very much. Fingers crossed I get a perfect round. Cowboys have the bye this weekend, and it's just time to put the feet up and truly enjoy the footy as well. Hopefully, it's not too long of a fortnight anyway. Enjoy the footy, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Take care. Adios.